Martha, it's a pleasure to talk to you. How would you assess the legal process so far?
I think it has been disappointingly slow. We spent quite a while at the court martial. That was 2.5 months, because from mid-November to 31st of January, when the court martial, trial of civilians by the court martial was declared unconstitutional. At the court martial, nothing really had gone on. It's mentions, it's, just applications and all that. And it took almost 2 months for the matter to be transferred to the civilian court. And there was this period of slightly over 1 month when there were no warrants, because the warrants of detention had expired on the 3rd of February. Remember, the case was to go to court on the 3rd of February, but after the ruling of 31st of March by the Supreme Court, 3rd February never happened. It meant the prison had no valid warrant to continue holding Dr. Kizza Besigye and Obeid Lutale. We impressed that on the civilian court when we came to the High Court, but they did nothing about it. He was in remand without a warrant for a while, and eventually the files were transferred. At some stage, the judge now signed the remand warrant, but it's after a month of illegal detention. And eventually, the new charges were brought in March. Yeah.
So when Besigye was first detained, what were your immediate concerns, particularly around due process, access to defense, and medical care?
My immediate reaction was that the whole case is based on illegalities. Besigye was abducted. I'll call it an abduction, because the military officers, Ugandan military officers, who abducted him from Nairobi, Riverside Apartments, Nairobi, aided and abetted by Kenyan security agencies, had no court order, and Ugandan officers have no authority whatsoever under the law to make an arrest in Kenya. So it was an abduction. And the Kenyan authorities, to make an arrest of a foreign national and cause him to be renditioned, they would need, the proper procedure is to obtain a court order. And a court order is obtained after the nation that wishes its national arrested has formally approached Kenya through the Attorney General's office or minister responsible for such matters. And then the Attorney General goes to court to get an order to arrest and to return the person arrested to court for extradition proceedings. In other words, due process. The person who wants you taken to your country will have a chance to say why, and you will have a chance to resist if you do not want to be taken back. Yeah. That process was not followed. Therefore, they were abducted, taken through the border without proper documentation. Yeah. The passports of both Dr. Besigye and Obeid Lutale were left at their residence in Kenya in a boutique hotel in Kilimani, Nairobi. They were later to be collected by their lawyer, Mr. Arias Lukwago, who is the Lord Mayor of Kampala. Yeah. So they are crossing the border without documentation. It's another illegality. It's actually trafficking in persons. Because if you go without documentation, the government of Kenya can say it is not aware you left the country, and the fact that the Ugandans who spirited him out, there was no documentation, they can also deny. You can be disappeared forever. Best practices in criminal law, Commonwealth and elsewhere, is that you can never build a criminal case on illegal actions. You cannot pretend to enforce the law when you yourself are a lawbreaker.
And of course, the government of Uganda argues that the charges against Besigye are a legitimate national security matter of concern. From your perspective, how do you respond to that claim?
I take it with a pinch of salt. If they needed to arrest Dr. Besigye, why wait for him to come to Nairobi? He had just arrived in Nairobi on the morning of the 16th. Why couldn't they arrest him in Uganda? You see? And national security of Uganda ends at the boundary of Uganda and Kenya. Ugandan authorities have no business conducting arrests inside Kenya. If they had legitimate concerns, why not put them through the legal process? Yeah.
What obstacles have you and the defense team faced in securing his rights while he has been held, for example, in the courts, prison access, even monitoring his health, because at one time there was a worry that he was not doing well?
Even now, his health is not what it should be. You can see that by merely looking at him. He has not been given the medical attention he needs throughout his incarceration. So the whole process has been marred by irregularities, and I can say without equivocation that so far Dr. Besigye has not received fair treatment at the courts the way the Constitution of Uganda orders and to the required international standards. And to that I will add that the Ugandan Constitution is very clear. Where an accused person has been in remand for more than 180 days, that is 6 months, he shall be admitted to bail, unless if there are concerns that, would deny him that. We made an application for mandatory bail before Justice Baguma. He threw it out, and he ruled that Besigye and Lutale had not finished 180 days. Yet, the time they have been in remand, courtesy of the court-martial, ought to be counted. Their authorities saying so.
He has a long history of multiple arrests behind him.
Yeah.
I want to pick your mind on what this latest incarceration means, being that now this time around it's the longest he has been incarcerated.
This clearly points towards the presidential and other elections being held in Uganda in January of next year, mid-January next year. Dr. Besigye is the leader of the People's Patriotic Front. And being incarcerated for a whole year prior to the election, slightly over a year, is disabling him and his party from participating in the elections. So it's an assault on his civil and political rights as well as his human rights. Yeah.
What do you think this incarceration signals to the broader Ugandan and the opposition at large? I mean, CSO, civil society organization.
It's a pushback on the democratic gains, a violation of the Constitution of Uganda, and a clear signal that Uganda, although it says in its constitution that it's a democratic republic, has abandoned those democratic ideals. It's also a violation of the East African Treaty, which clearly opens by indicating that the nations of the Jumuiya will uphold the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. It's again a violation of the African Charter on human and people's rights and international law. And I would say to President Yoweri Museveni, who is the senior most political figure and head of state in the East African region and the longest serving, that it would be very sad to have the current times compared to the Idi Amin era as far as disappearances of persons are concerned. Think too about your legacy. Think about the Jumuiya. You've been the greatest advocate of the East African community. What does this mean to us East African nationals? Are we safe when we step out of our countries? How do Ugandans feel recalling that Besigye was abducted from Kenya? How do Kenyans feel about Tanzania? Kenyans have now been killed in Tanzania.
What would you consider a successful outcome for Besigye's defense?
A successful outcome is the unconditional release of Besigye and Lutale. Because I believe them when they tell me they have done nothing wrong. And the circumstances, the illegalities surrounding their arrest and prosecution convince me that they have done nothing wrong. And also the history of multiple arrests and tormenting of Besigye, especially around election time in Uganda, convince me that it's less of a legal trial but a political process.
Yeah.
But we are here to fight it together with the Ugandan team.
Yeah. How much of a toll is this on you in your daily, day-to-day schedule?
Obviously, it's taking time, energy, but defense of human rights of any one person, whether you know them or not, is the defense of your own rights. If we fail to speak out, these things will come to bite us sometime.
My name is Walter Besigye. That's all we had for you. Good evening. That's impressive, but